Good morning again, Wisconsin. Lieutenant Governor's Small Business Academy 2025. It is now 9:05. Thank you all for the slight delay. Our 8:30 session was jam-packed with excellent information. Now it's time for our 9 o'clock session. Unlock your business's potential by learning to use this business model canvas framework. It's my pleasure to introduce Melinda Osterberg, Regional Economic Development Director with Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. And Melinda is our facilitator for this next session. Melinda?
Thank you. I'm Melinda Osterberg. I'm a Regional Director with WEDC, and it is my pleasure to introduce Mark McCleary. He is a certified SCORE mentor who's had a career in executive management, strategic planning, marketing, product management, and sales. His diverse experience spans family business, private equity, consumer and commercial products, retail, healthcare, and professional services. As a marketing executive, Mark has managed iconic global brands including Perlick, Bico, Brunswick Bowling and Billards, Life Fitness, Hammer Strength, Planters Nuts, Lifesavers Candy, Windex Glass Cleaner, and Glade Air Fresheners. He currently splits his time between consulting and being a volunteer mentor with several Midwest nonprofit organizations, including SCORE, Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation, BizStarts, G-Beta, Generator, Racine County Economic Development Corporation, and Roberts Ellsworth Correctional Center. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for joining us and sharing your knowledge with us. We certainly do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Melinda. Good morning and welcome, everyone. As Melinda mentioned, I'm a volunteer mentor with SCORE. In case you didn't know, SCORE is a partner of the SBA, and there's over 10,000 volunteer mentors in the United States. So if you're running a business, please feel free to take advantage of that free service and get a mentor. So Melinda, are we ready to dive in?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, let me share my screen. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, it looks great.
Thank you, Mark. That's great.
Okay, well, welcome to Strategic Planning using the Business Model Canvas. What we're going to do is we're going to try to achieve 3 goals today. One, we're going to talk about the importance of strategic planning for small businesses. We're going to do a quick overview of the 4-step strategic planning process, but we're going to spend most of our time doing a deep dive into using the Business Model Canvas. As Melinda mentioned, I've been doing strategic planning for about 30 years. And what I'm excited about with this training is that we're taking sort of the lessons learned and the best practices of strategic planning and customizing it towards the needs of small business leadership. So why do you need a strategic plan if you're operating a small business? You know, it's truly vital to your success. We know that almost 100% of publicly traded companies have an active, updated strategic plan. We know that almost 100% of private equity-owned businesses have a strat plan, but less than 10%, and some would say only 2% of small businesses have an active strategic plan. So that's a huge gap, and one that we're really trying to close. So why do you need a strat plan? It's basically the GPS for your business. It tells you where you are, where you're going, and how to get there. And it also provides a very important tool for maximizing the return on investment of your time. Anyone who's operating a small business knows that your time is vital. And so making sure that you use your time in the most efficient way is very important. Now, when we talk about a strategic plan, we're talking about 3 components. There's the 3-year long-term strategic plan. There's a 1-year detailed and prioritized 1-year plan. It's basically your commitment to what you're going to achieve in the next 12 months. And then there's a to-do list of what you're going to do today, this week, and this month to achieve your 12-month goals. That's why strategic planning is so important. Now, this is the planning process that we use. And big and small companies have been using this for a long time. The 4 steps are ground, dream, prioritize, and align. And ground is basically making sure that everyone participating in the strategic planning process has a shared understanding, a shared foundation. You want to make sure everyone understands the market and your business and the competition and your customers and what's happening in the external environment. The idea is that everyone has a shared understanding so they can participate in the next 3 steps. So the next step is dream, and that's actually probably the most fun part of this process. It's imagining where you can take your business in the next 3 years. That's the dream phase. The next phase is a little bit less fun because it requires you to make a lot of trade-offs. It's the prioritization phase. What are you committing to achieve in the next 12 months in your business? That's the goal of prioritization. And lastly, align, as I mentioned earlier, it's your to-do list of what you need to do today, this week, and this month. Now, there's 3 guiding principles we use in strategic planning. I've already mentioned the first one. We want to be very respectful of your time in the strategic planning process. We don't want to waste time. So the ROI of your time is a principle. The second principle is critical versus important. If you're operating a business today, there's 1,000 things on your plate that are important, but there's only a few, a small handful of critical things you need to do to be truly successful. We want to focus on the critical. And lastly, there's this concept of full contact brainstorming. The idea here is that we're going to discuss, debate, maybe argue. We're going to chew on some ideas. So you have to have a little bit of a thick skin because we really want to address the challenges facing the business to build the plan that's going to help you be as successful as possible. So that's the planning process that we go through. This is the tool we use, the business model canvas. I mentioned I've been doing strategic planning for a long time. I only started using this model about 3 years ago when I found it on the score.org website. And I'm not going to go into the details here, the definitions in detail here, because I've changed some, but at a high level, the 3 buckets on the left, key partners, key activities, and key resources are all the things you're going to do to operate and grow your business. The 3 buckets on the right, customer segments, customer relationships, and channels, are everything to do about the customers you target, the gatekeepers that help you get to those customers, and how you make money, channels. The bucket in the middle, value proposition, is probably the most important. It's one sentence that describes the essence of your business, the essence of your brand, why you're in business, and it can be challenging. And then the 2 buckets on the bottom are financial buckets. The cost structure, what it costs you to operate your business on a monthly basis, including paying yourself. And revenue streams is what your revenue is going to look like for the next 3 years. So this is the 1-page strategic plan for small business. Oftentimes, big businesses have an 80 to 120-page strategic plan. This is 1 page, which makes it great for small business. But because we're respectful of your time, we don't use this format. It takes way too much time trying to get, your answers in these little boxes. So all we do is when we do a strategic plan, we use a Word document or a Google document or whatever you have access to that's quick and convenient. So I just want to point out, you don't have to fit your answers in the little boxes. So let's get going. Let's assume we've completed the ground phase, that everyone participating in this planning process has a shared understanding of the current situation, the external environment, and we're going to jump into the dream phase, where we're going to focus on where we want to take our business over the next 3 years. And the business that we're going to do a plan for is an event planning business, a party planning business. So we're going to pretend that we've been in business for a couple years. Maybe it's been kind of a side gig. It hasn't grown big enough to support us full time. And our goal is really to grow our event planning business into our full-time job. And we're going to take the buckets from the business model canvas 3 at a time. So in the dream phase over the next 3 years for our event planning business, we want to think about who are our key partners. These are people or businesses that help us operate, and grow our business. So operate, you can imagine our suppliers and staff. Grow would be lead generation and customers and marketing. Key resources are all those foundation resources you need to operate your business: banker, lawyer, accountant, maybe licensing, insurance, a landlord. And the third bucket are key activities, and it's tied very closely to key partners. There should be a ton of overlap here. So the key activities are the strategic things you do to operate and grow. So operate, maybe it's your manufacturing, your training, your merchandising. Grow could be branding and marketing. So let's go ahead and start the dream phase for our event planning business. And this is the brainstorm we did for this made up business for the next 3 years. So you can see under the operate part of key partners, we have staff, venues where we would have events, food providers like caterers. We have maybe DJs, maybe a bar service, and decoration suppliers. Those are kind of the key strategic partners that we could develop a relationship over the next 3 years to grow our business. Under grow, there's a lot more because grow is everyone who can help us basically find clients. So it's your current clients who can introduce you to others. Maybe it's party and wedding planners who have too much business, or maybe they don't specialize in the area, who could send business your way. It could be the venues that host the events and maybe could introduce you to clients. It could be churches or schools that hold a lot of events. Maybe it's companies in the HR department that plans all kinds of different events at companies, from retirements to holiday parties. Maybe it's funeral homes. You know, we're brainstorming here. We don't want to miss anything. Maybe it's funeral homes that have end of life celebrations, or community centers, or maybe it's people that are in the wedding industry like nail salons and wedding stores. So you can see in the dream phase, we've listed those type of people or businesses that we could think of that could help us grow our business in the next 3 years. Now you're going to see the next column is key activities, and it's very closely aligned with partners. So from an operate standpoint, you have to plan the party. You have to staff and train your employees. You need to find the vendors who are going to provide everything you need for the party. You need to do your billing and accounts receivable and pay your employees. And ultimately, you need to execute the party and do a great job there. So those are the big buckets of key activities that we want to capture. Under grow, there's a ton of different ways that we could grow the business. There's brand building with websites or social media, or maybe getting involved in the community. Thought leadership is something we could do, you know, really posting a lot on social media about ideas for having parties or decorations or things like that. There's certainly business development, getting out in the community and meeting with all your vendors and developing a close relationship. Maybe you're going to develop party packages that you have on your website, you know, maybe like a silver, gold, and platinum package that your clients can start with and you can customize. And maybe you're going to participate in different types of wedding shows or get active in the community with the chamber or the Rotary. So you can see there's a bunch of different activities that you can potentially do over the next 3 years. When it comes to key resources, we kind of just list them all. Your banker, lawyer, web host, those are all the resources. So this is basically the completion of the dream phase for an event planner business. So let's move to the next 3 buckets. And these are all about the customer, the gatekeeper, and making money. So your customer segments are your key types of customers that you group together, like with customer profiles or personas. And you also want to think a little bit about the psychographics of your customer. And what this means is, what is that customer feeling when they're working with you? What are they feeling after the party? And that's very important for this type of business. We also want to think about the gatekeepers. You know, you can work very hard to find one client and one customer, but maybe developing a great relationship with a vendor will get you 100 customers. So oftentimes, focusing on the gatekeepers that can introduce you to clients is a better return on investment of your time than actually reaching out to end clients. So those are the customer segments. The channels is, again, how you get paid. And so, you know, if you're in business, you could be selling in store or online or pop-ups. Maybe you monetize your content on YouTube. There's a bunch of different ways to get paid these days. And lastly, customer relationships is how you build loyalty with your customers and the gatekeepers. And we're going to talk a lot about the different ideas there. So back to our strategic plan in the dream phase for an event planner example. So you can see the end client segments that we thought about. We're engaged people. You know, weddings are a big business. Maybe we should target people that are planning a wedding. Maybe we should target parents because they could be throwing not only weddings, but all kinds of birthday parties or other parties for their family. Maybe we should target our family and friends, the owners of the businesses, family and friends, because they can be great clients. And as I said, we've been doing this as a side hustle. And so maybe there's enough business and family and friends for us to grow into a full-time job. Lastly, companies. You know, maybe we target companies. So those are the clients, but there's a lot more gatekeepers. We've already mentioned a lot of these under the key partners. So there's different wedding and party planners, corporate event planners or human resources, maybe the managers at venues or churches, maybe office managers at schools, funeral home managers and community centers. So there's a lot of different segments that we want to consider over the next 3 years to grow the business. The next bucket, customer relationships, is about building loyalty. So obviously executing a successful event builds loyalty because your client looks great. Minimizing the stress for the clients could be a differentiator. You know, there's people get very excited when they're planning a big event. If you can be a calming influence and make sure the day goes great, that can really help build loyalty. Certainly using social media to recognize your customers is a great idea, but also maybe you recognize your customers a year later, meaning that on the 1-year anniversary or 1 year from the wedding or the birthday, it's a great opportunity to revisit that customer relationship and build loyalty and maybe get leads. Maybe you want to do an old-fashioned handwritten thank you card. So you can see there's a lot of different ideas for building customer relationships. And don't forget the last one, which is building loyalty with all those gatekeepers and vendors so you can become the preferred partner. So there's a lot there under customer relationships. And last, we want to spend a lot of time thinking about how to monetize the business, how to make money. So obviously there's planning fees, but maybe also you can negotiate finder's fees. You know, if I bring 10 parties to your venue, can I get a 10% finder's fee? Or maybe if the next one is, maybe if I do centralized billing, I can add a 10% administrative fee, add a margin for the cost of the food and the drink. Maybe I can monetize party planning content. I start a YouTube page and I can get paid for the advertisements for people who visit to look at all the different ideas for party planning. And the last one is, who knows, maybe you can even monetize speaking engagements if you build your brand big enough. So those are all of the ideas that we brainstormed during the dream phase for this event planner business over the next 3 years. So the last 3 buckets are value proposition, cost structure, and revenue streams. We're not going to spend a ton of time on cost structure and revenue streams. This is more financial, but we do want to spend a lot of time on value proposition. Your value proposition, as I mentioned, is the value that you offer your customers. It's one sentence that describes the essence of your business, and it's really hard. It's not easy. I've worked with companies and brands that are over 100 years old that were still struggling. And a good value proposition is 3 things. It's ownable, meaning whatever you say about your business is true. It's relevant, meaning that whatever you say about your business is relevant to your target customers and the gatekeepers. And the hardest one, it's differentiated. So whatever you say about your business is unique and different than all your competition, which is often very difficult to do. So let's take a look at what this looks like in the dream phase. So the name of our business is Cola's Event Planning. And so a potential value proposition could be, and we put the word only in front of the sentence because it really forces you to differentiate when you put the word only in front of the sentence. So only COLA's event planning offers the most unique and memorable parties in Southeast Wisconsin. So is it ownable? Yeah, it sounds true. Is it relevant? Well, if I'm throwing a party, I would love for it to be both unique and memorable. And it's differentiated in that both it's unique and also it's geographically targeting Southeast Wisconsin. So that's a potential value proposition. We also talk about an elevator speech. And an elevator speech is basically your value proposition with a second sentence that supports the first one. So it gives you a reason to believe. Oftentimes it's features that support the benefit of your value proposition. So in this case, maybe our elevator speech is, only COLA's event planning offers the most unique and memorable parties in Southeast Wisconsin. With the widest network of venues and caterers, COLA's provides bespoke, stress-free events that your friends will be talking about for years. So there's a lot of things in here that are good. If you want a unique and memorable party, having the widest network of venues and caterers is important. The idea that the events are bespoke or customized for you means that you get exactly what you want. We've already talked about this idea of stress-free events, which is very important. And who wouldn't want to throw a party for a family member or a significant other that people are talking about for years? So that's what we're talking about with a value proposition and elevator speech. And then, of course, the cost structures, what it costs to operate your business, and revenue streams are your 3-year forecasts. So I'm not going to spend time on the documents, but I've included a P&L as well as page 1 of a 3-year forecast. So we've just completed the dream phase of a strategic plan for this party planning business. And now we're ready to move into the prioritization phase. And again, the prioritization phase is what we're committing to ourselves, to our employers, to our bank, to our financiers, to our family members. What are we going to achieve in the next 12 months? And this is hard because we have to make a lot of trade-offs because there's a lot of exciting ideas on here. We can't focus on all of them. So what you see here is we've gone and taken the dream phase and we've put numbers in front of those things that we're committing to accomplishing in the next 12 months. And we've prioritized those, with one being the most important. We've left bullet points with those ideas that we're not going to focus on. And the bullet points operate in 2 ways. The first way, we want to keep the ideas for the future, so we don't want to lose them. So we put a bullet point in front of them. But secondly, if there's a bullet point in front of it, you don't have to think about it. It reduces stress because it's no longer hanging over your head. So all you have to focus on are the numbers. So let's take a look at what we've prioritized as far as key partners. When it comes to operate, we're going to focus on our staff, the venues, the food providers or caterers, and the DJs. We really don't think we have the capacity in the next 12 months to develop our own bar service or our own decoration supplier. So we're assuming that the venues will handle that for us. So those are the 4 key partners we prioritize for the next 12 months. From the growth standpoint, we're focusing on our current and past clients, the different types of party planners in our community, and the venues. Although we love the idea of corporate events, we love the idea of church events, we just don't think we have the ability in the next 12 months. So we're making that tough decision to ignore those for 12 months and really focus on the other 4. What you see under key activities should be aligned with what we have under partners. So you see under operate, we actually have to prioritize all 5 because you have to do all 5 to operate the business. So we need to do party planning, and we need to do training and hiring. We need to identify all the vendors for each event. We have to do billing and accounts receivable and pay our employees, and we have to execute the party. So you can see that those are all prioritized. But under grow, we've been able to be a little bit more selective. We've basically chosen 2 activities to grow the business in the next 12 months. brand building using our website, social media, and community involvement, and business development, meaning getting out and meeting with the different food providers and venues and DJs to build that relationship. So you see that we do not prioritize key resources. We simply list them so that we know who they are when we need them. So that is the prioritization phase for an event planner business over the next 12 months. So let's go to the next page. So from a customer segment standpoint, although we love the idea of getting into the wedding industry, we also know it's very competitive. So we're going to focus in the next 12 months just on our families and friends, just making sure they know what we're doing. We're looking for help. We're looking for introductions and leads, and we're happy to do their events, for themselves. So from a client standpoint, we're focusing only on family and friends. And from a gatekeeper, again, like we saw in the key partners, wedding planners, party planners, and venue managers, that's where we're going to really hang our hat to help us achieve our goals over the next 12 months. Under customer relationships, we're only going to focus on 3 things so that we can do them really, really well. That is executing successful events. So that's going to be a huge focus. Minimizing stress for our clients. We really want to position ourselves as sort of the stress-free party planner in our community. And then using social media to recognize our clients. That's really where we're going to focus. We know that recognizing the gatekeepers and vendors are important. We'll try to do that when we can, but the prioritization is focusing on our clients. And then as far as the channels, how we're going to derive our income, it's planning fees. We are going to try to negotiate finder's fees while we're out there doing that business development. And we are going to try to offer a centralized billing for our clients where we can add a margin. So that's the channels, and that summarizes the prioritization phase. Because what you see here is we don't prioritize the value prop, the cost structure, the revenue. There's really only 5 areas that we prioritize, and those are the key partners, the key activities, customer segments, customer relationships, and channels. So that concludes the prioritization phase. Now, in practice, typically the process of doing a strategic plan is a 2-day offsite. Typically, you take the participant offsite, maybe to a conference center or someplace where you can kind of get away from the business, and you typically do ground in the morning of day 1, dream in the afternoon of day 1. Prioritization in the morning of day 2, and align in the afternoon of day 2. So it tends to be like a 2-day offsite. Obviously, we're going through this, rapidly to get it done in 45 minutes. So we're ready for the last part of our strategic planning process, and this is the easiest because align is basically figuring out what our to-do list is for us and our staff of what we want to focus on today, this week, and this month. So what we've done is we've taken the number 1 and 2, and sometimes the number 3 prioritization from our prioritization phase, and we put it into our align phase. So basically, what are the activities we want to focus on a daily, a weekly, and a monthly cycle? So on a daily basis, we're certainly going to follow up with our client projects and leads. Obviously, a hot lead is very important that we're very timely. So that's going to be something daily. And we're also going to daily address staff requirements and training. We need to make sure that our team is ready to go when the client asks. That's from an operations standpoint. From a grow, we're going to our social media, targeting clients and planners to really build that brand. So we really want to be talking about our capabilities. We want to talk about brand building activities. So maybe information about different types of parties, and we want to be thanking the planners. From a weekly standpoint, when it comes to operate, we want to coordinate with our vendors on any upcoming events. So we probably want to touch base with those key vendors every single week. And obviously we want to execute our billing, our accounts receivable, paying our employees on a weekly basis. From a growth standpoint, we want to update our website to build our brand every week. So after every single event, we want to make sure that we post and celebrate some pictures on our website. And we also want to use social media to recognize people that are involved in those events. So that's our weekly align phase for the strategic plan for our event planner business. And lastly, operate. On a monthly basis, we want to be looking for new vendors or new venues and negotiating things like finder's fees. If we're positioning our brand, if our value proposition is the widest range of venues and vendors, we need to make sure that we stay current on that. From a grow, there's a lot more things we need to do on a monthly basis. So we certainly need to have those business development meetings we prioritize with the party planners, the wedding planners, and the venues. We also want to participate at least in one community activity, whether it's the Rotary or the Chamber, to get out there and build our brand. And lastly, because we're focusing on family and friends, we want to let them know what's going on in the business. So give them maybe you develop a monthly newsletter of how the business is going, gently ask them for leads. But this is the end phase of the strategic plan for our event planner. A couple last slides before we open it up for Q&A. So things to think about for a strategic plan for a small business. We want to talk about the fact that your strategic plan is a living, breathing document. So it's something that you want to revisit at least every 3 months. A great practice to get into is every 3 months, if you have a staff meeting, review the strategic plan, because in the align phase, you've assigned activities to some of your employees or to yourself. And so to hold each other accountable, it's a great idea to revisit it every 3 months. It's also an okay thing to do to update it. So we really, when we're in the dream phase, we're very excited about targeting local businesses for events. In the prioritization phase, we had to make the difficult choice not to focus on it. But who knows, maybe in 6 months, we feel like we have everything is running well, and we have the capacity to start targeting businesses, putting together a marketing sales plan for local businesses. So maybe you update your plan as circumstances change. I say hang it on your wall and share it widely. Now, maybe not the financial aspects, maybe not your cost structure, maybe not your revenue goals, but the strategic aspects, you should share it widely, especially with your employees and your cheerleaders and everyone who's in there supporting you. And it's very important to think about some of the positive aspects of having a strategic plan. Certainly, it's for decision making. Keeping focused on those activities that you've prioritized really helps with decision making. And a great example is if you're in business, you know that everyone and their brother knocks on your door looking for money. Can you sponsor this? Can you sponsor this golf hole? Can you support this cause? And it's very difficult sometimes to say no. But if you know your value proposition, you know your target customers and gatekeepers, it becomes much easier to say, okay, this event that they want me to sponsor isn't really targeting my target clients. It's not really targeting my target partners. And so it's a lot easier to say no. Certainly from a time management, it's easier to use the strat plan as a filter to keep you on task and not to kind of chase tangents when things come your way. Obviously, if a church or a school or a business knocks on your door and asks for a party, you're gonna take their money and plan on an outstanding party for them. And so it's not like you're going to turn away business because it's not a focus. What we're talking about is really how you build your business, how you target your marketing and sales efforts, how you talk about your branding. So it helps you allocate your time. It helps you allocate your resources towards what's on your strat plan. And certainly it's a measure of progress and success for you and your staff. So my second to last slide is a success checklist if you, the owner of a business, is going to lead a strategic planning process for your business. Now, many of my clients, and I've currently over the last 3 years worked with a little over 70 small businesses in Southeast Wisconsin. And with every single one of my clients, we always start with a business model canvas strat plan. I simply found that I couldn't be a good mentor if I didn't have a good understanding of them, their goals, their history, where they want to take their business. And so doing a business model canvas was a great start. But if you're going to do a business model canvas and it's just you and maybe a mentor, maybe not all this applies. But if you have some employees and you're going to go through a strategic planning, an annual strategic planning process with your team, these are things to think about. Certainly pre-planning is important. We talked about that ground phase. So spending the time or allocating the work to make sure that you have a good understanding of your financials, a good understanding of pricing amongst you and your competition. Is there any government regulations that are going to impact you in the coming years? So what's happening basically internally and externally to the business? That's very important for the ground phase, the pre-planning. A thoughtful choice of participants. Typically, if you have a small business, you're going to include your direct reports or your management team, or maybe people who are good supporters of your business. But you may want to think about there could be someone who's maybe more junior in the organization who's a high potential. So letting them participate in the strategic planning process could not only bring unique ideas from this person, but also kind of lets them see how the sausage is made at the senior management level. Also, maybe you have a salesperson who has a great understanding of the external environment. So you don't only have to invite sort of your direct reports. You can invite other people. You just want to keep it, 8 people, maybe 12 at the very most. Rigorous data analysis and preparation. I think I mentioned it, pre-planning. The next point is very important for the owner of the business or the CEO or the head person. And that is, you have to manage yourself and your tone throughout the meetings. And what I mean by this is if the meeting starts and someone has kind of a crazy idea and you immediately shut them down or tell them it's a bad idea or whatever, you can really shut down the whole meeting for the next 2 days. So you have to, especially in the dream phase, allow people to kind of come up with crazy ideas and think outside the box. So you have to be open and warm and welcoming to other people's ideas, even if you're the one who this business, it's your baby, you're the one who's been leading it for a long time. You need to maybe let go a little bit and make sure that you're operating as not only the leader of the company, but the leader of the strategic planning process. That's a very important one. And let yourself and your team dream big. Obviously, the dream phase is all about that. How can you get to 20 million? How do you get to 50 million? How do you get to 100 million? How do you launch new products or new services or enter new markets? They're all great things to think about in that dream phase. It should be fun. It should be a lot of fun. The environment, in the meeting should be fun and joking, and it's not super serious. Have a lot of fun. When you're done, make sure you communicate the plan, as I mentioned in the previous slide, up and down throughout the organization and frequently. Revisit the plan each quarter. Hold your team accountable is very important from the aligned phase. And finally, repeat. This should become an annual process, just like it is in publicly traded and PE-owned companies. It should really be an annual process. The first year you do it is the most difficult. After you've done it, every year becomes a little bit easier because kind of year 2 becomes year 1, year 3 becomes year 2, and it becomes a process that way. So that is a very quick introduction to how to do strategic planning for a business using the business model Canvas. And I would love for Melinda to help me open it up to any questions.
Yes, thank you. I think Michael's actually taking them in the chat, but that was super inspiring. I immediately went and found the template on score.com. Super easy to use. So that's just a fantastic resource that's free. It took me about 30 seconds to find it and download it, and get started. So yeah, this is super inspiring. Maybe I want to open an event business.
Just not something
you're looking for. Michael, were there any questions?
Thank you, Melinda. At this time, no specific questions have come in other than where can I get those slides? So if you wanted to direct to score.com and that location, that would be very helpful. And then we do have about 5 minutes for discussion. And actually, a couple questions have come in. So I'll read one of them now and then give you time to plug score.com. Can you offer advice when folks only want leadership or high-level employees at planning? For example, inviting only department heads and none of their direct reports. How do you show value of having different levels and perspectives at planning meetings?
Yeah, I guess the way I would address it is talking about the benefit to the organization, to the team, to motivation and belonging in the organization. Ultimately, you need buy-in from your team to execute the amazing ideas that come out of the strategic plan process. And so a great way to get buy-in is to involve others than just direct reports. And so I guess what I would try to encourage whoever is choosing their participants is to think about the organizational benefits of having a couple people who aren't direct reports involved in the process. I work with enough family businesses that I know that oftentimes family businesses want to be very hold the secrets very close to the vest and not be super inclusive with sharing all the strategies. And I would just encourage them that having more minds in the process up to a reasonable amount really brings benefit and sets up your future leaders for the organization.
Thank you, Mark. Would you be able to address where on score.com this is located, or is it just a sort of go to score.com and look?
You asked, do we typically share presentations with participants?
Recording of this session, I believe, is going to be released at some time, though I don't know when yet.
And is it released with the document attached?
No, but if you're willing to share with anyone that has asked, that's great.
Yeah, if there's some mechanism that I can send this, I'm happy to send this out. But basically either doing a Google search or doing a search on score.org, you should be able to find the business model canvas. But like I said, I'm happy to share a PDF of this presentation if we have some process to do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
and you did impress people on the session. Some folks are asking how they sign up for a mentor.
So finding a mentor is pretty easy. You go into score.org and there's a tab on the top that I think it says find a mentor. And then you have to fill in some information. The thing I would suggest is be as detailed as you can. As I also mentioned, there's 10,000 mentors. And you can find a mentor pretty much who understands every industry and every sort of type of business in the US. So the more specific you can be in your request, you'll get a mentor who's better for you. Last week, I found someone who had expert franchising dog type businesses. So you can find a SCORE mentor with almost any expertise that you can imagine on score.org.
Yeah, score.org was really easy to navigate. There's right at the top, it's find a mentor, and then under templates and resources, you can find both the business plan template and the business model canvas template. Mark, one question I had is, as a mentor, if you're meeting with someone for the first time, they know they want to go through the business model canvas template. Do you want them to have kind of like taken a first draft at that in preparation for meeting with their mentor, or is that something you like to do initially together?
No, typically the way I work is we have an initial introductory video call where because the 10,000 mentors have 10,000 different ways of mentoring. I just use the business model canvas because I felt like it made me more effective. And so what I do is I explain to any potential client that this is sort of the process that if you want to work with me, we'll use. You're free to have as many mentors as you want, or you're free to say, you know what, I don't want to hurt your feelings, Mark, but you're not right for me. And that's fine. That's why we have that first meeting, to make sure that, we're in sync on what the goals are for the organization and the individual. And so then I spend that first meeting explaining the business model canvas. And then we decide together, do you want to now go and take a week and take a first crack at it? And I encourage my clients, spend no more than 30 minutes on this. Okay. This should be top of mind. Just list everything you can imagine from partners, and then we'll go together and we'll work on it together. I have other clients who are maybe startups, and they're not quite as confident, and so they'll say, well, can we do a couple of them together? So it's basically, the client is the boss when you're a mentor, and so the client dictates the process that we go through.
Great, thank you, Mark.
Mark, I have another question for you from the audience, and I wonder if this might be the last question, but if you want another after this, I can look again. As a business of just one individual, no employees, how does this apply?
So if you get a mentor, if you get a volunteer SCORE mentor, it can be the two of you. If you have a family member, a significant other, a friend, anyone who you value their opinion, who know you, who understand the business, you could do it with a person like that. You're basically asking for, if it's two people, it normally takes me maybe 4 hours to complete this with a client. So you're asking someone who's in your life to help you. You value their opinion. It could be a bank or whatever. You value your opinion. Would they be willing to maybe go to a bar somewhere for a couple hours and just talk about these concepts? So even if you're a sole proprietor and the only employee, it doesn't mean you can't seek out input into your business or mentally go through the steps on your own. So there's a lot of options here.
Thank you, Mark. Melinda, anything to close out the session?
No, but thank you so much, Mark. I think that you are a great advertisement for finding a SCORE mentor and beginning this planning process. I think I'm kind of a strange duck, and I do a strategic planning for both my professional life and my home life. And I just find it so relevant. So really appreciate you sharing your expertise and time today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Well, with that, thank you both very much for delivering this 9 o'clock session, Unlock Your Business's Potential by Learning to Use the Business Model Canvas Framework. This is the 2025 Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Small Business Academy. And we will be right back at 10 o'clock sharp this time with our panel discussion with lenders.